Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Before we start anything, we're going to start telling you about Nailed's membership drive for 2023. Greg Eric, what do you think of that, buddy?
I think it's hot, man. We got a lot going on, including the call we were just on. Exciting stuff with councils and committees and all sorts of things.
That was a deadly call. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about it because everything's confidential on that call. But if you're in the
It's
lighting
coming.
industry, you would love to have been a fly on the wall for that little Zoom call. That was an intense one. Everybody was into it. It's a hardcore committee that we're putting out. On today's show, I hope I pronounced her last name right. We have Brooke Ziolo. Brooke is the president.
Perfect.
Okay. Brooke is the president of Egret Consulting, an executive search firm exclusive in the electrical industry for 23 years. Brooke has been recruiting for 14. She focuses solely on lighting manufacturers and lighting design firms to help them hire industry-specific talent in sales, marketing, operations, engineering, product management, and lighting design at all levels. Brooke is also a member of the IALD and WILD. That's wild. Women in Lighting Design, and has done several presentations in the lighting industry. Is available on LinkedIn and at egretconsulting.com. But before we get to Brooke, Greg, we got to go to the gangsters down in New York. SATCO.com, light thing, right thing, brother.
That would be out in New York for me, down for you. Well, maybe it is a little down for me, but the area lights they have. A lot of people have LED area lights, but Satco actually has features to go with it. And I learned this firsthand when I was out there. They showed it to me. And in their brochure, you'll see that, they have advanced surge protection, high quality LED chips. They have heavy duty hardware and die casting. So actually the components, which we've done podcasts on that are in it, are heavy duty. So they're going to last. And something I haven't seen anybody else do, they call it an integrated respirator that helps balance air pressure and prevent humidity buildup in the fixture. Every exterior fixture that has it effective is because that humidity, that water that gets in, they actually have it respirate so it gets out. They
I think
thought it
there's a
through.
couple other reasons why they're defective, but that's probably one of the major ones.
There
But
you
go
go.
to SATCO.com. That's right, light thing, right thing for the gangsters down at Satco. But right now, we are honored to have Brooke Ziolo. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, Brooke.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, how did you guys get exclusive in the electrical, or how, why? Let's do that. Electrical lighting industry.
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that. So actually, my father, Ted Connors, is the one that started Egret Consulting Group 23 years ago, and he was the
Okay.
former vice president of Cooper Lighting. And when they
Mm,
moved from uh, Illinois down to Georgia, he left and started Egret Consulting, and that's how I
okay.
got here. And he recruited
And
me.
very nice. Was it just for? I assume it couldn't have been just for Cooper at the time. It had to have been for any
Yeah,
electrical or
he
lighting company.
and basically started with any lighting company and then kind of expanded. We've got Prudence Thompson in our office too, and she's basically been here since Egret was founded, and she focuses just on the electrical distributors. So we've got actually we're up to a team of 11 now that we cover all aspects of the electrical industry. So we've got lighting, electrical distributors, wire and cable, power distribution, building automation, renewable technologies, and we're getting into cybersecurity as well.
Which of those has most openings right now, or most candidates? Or you're looking for? Sorry, you have candidates and you have jobs, right? Is that how it works? Maybe give
So
us that,
we're a
and then
search,
we'll get into
yeah, we're an executive search firm. So we focus, we primarily work with the clients, so the
it. Yeah,
companies, and work with them. They're looking for candidates, and then we go out and recruit people. But obviously, what we do, we're talking with people all day, every day. So we're talking with candidates as well, but we're not a placement agency.
got
Um,
it.
and in terms of, I mean, we're this year has been a record year for us. We're busy across the
Hmm.
board. We do a lot in electrical distribution and do a lot in lighting, but we're busy across the board.
Is there one that you see busier than the others of those multiple areas you mentioned?
Um, it's always funny because we all work with our own clients, but
Yeah.
probably distribution is the busiest right now.
And what kind of roles are you seeing?
Primarily sales. So we do a lot of outside sales, regional sales managers. Then we get into on the distribution side, branch managers, gear and lighting specialists, a lot of. And then we also do sales is the number one in the lighting aspect. And I speak a lot from my perspective just because that's what I work in the most. Um, but we do predominantly lighting, or I just said that, predominantly sales. And then we also do lighting designers is the second most common position that I place. And then we also do product management and engineering is generally the third most common.
Is there a demand for lighting designers? Are you seeing a lot of people asking for or looking for? Yeah.
Absolutely. This year has been a huge increase in demand on lighting designers. And that's anywhere from junior all the way up to senior level. And
You know
working on
why?
principal actually searches right now too.
Yeah. Is there anything that attributes to that? Why lighting design has grown?
I think there's a lot more interest in lighting design. A lot of architects used to do the lighting design themselves and not true lighting design as you think as a lighting design firm would do. But there's a lot more interest in having a building designed out by a professional lighting designer. And I also think there's a lot more, oh, there's a fly, a lot more buildings being built. So I think there's just a lot more demand for it right now.
I wonder if it has to do with the confusion of lighting too. If it's harder to manage it, whereas in the past, architect had a cut sheet and they say, "Yeah, put that thing in, put it everywhere," and that's what we
With
do
this
now
fixture
with
in, it's
LED.
not, there's not a lot of different choices and a lot of not, no color differences. And yeah, but now there's a whole RGB and people are a lot more worried about human centric health and all of that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And do you guys have any indication on why this is the best year? Is it did was I assume 2020, 21 maybe were less than 18 and 19 and then it grew, or is it not the case? Has it been steadily growing?
So 2020 was a good year. It actually ended up being a good year. 2021 was a record year for us, and this year is a record year for us. We're just seeing a lot of demand for companies that are growing, coming out of the recession or the pandemic, I guess. And there's just been a huge demand for finding talent, and it's really hard to find talent right now too. There's a shortage,
Yeah,
retirement type people are retiring, and also just people not wanting to, like everybody knows since the pandemic, the work life balance has shifted people's perspective on work too. So it's been harder to find people.
are you finding that the people you're working for are asking for lighting experience, or are they generally saying we prefer someone without lighting experience?
For the most part, they are looking for lighting industry experience. We're seeing more now that they'll consider people in other aspects of the overall electrical industry, which used to be we only want for a lighting manufacturer we only want lighting experience, but now they'll consider wire and cable experience or somebody coming from a distributor, which is not as common as it used to be, but we're definitely seeing more of that now.
Okay. How about any geographic trends? Are there more designers in the east and sales in the west, or does it not go like that?
Well, designers are very concentrated in New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So that's really where we see the bulk of the need. We're seeing a lot more interest in, or I shouldn't say interest, but companies willing to offer remote work, especially in lighting design and in sales. Sales has always been pretty typical remote. Um, but in terms of manufacturing, we're placing people in sales all across the country. For whatever reason, the big concentration has been in the South Central area, like Texas area, some in California. We used to do a lot in New York City and the Northeast, but that's been pretty low key the last couple of years.
I'm going to get Mike involved. Is that right? Is that lighting designers are only in those? I mean, they're not only, but in
Not
Minnesota we
only.
don't see it enough. But I mean, that's where the growth is, and I get why, to
I
some
don't
degree.
I
But
don't really know what a
is that right?
lighting designer is. Like when somebody says like I'm a lighting designer, like I don't really know what that means all the time. I mean, there are certifications and stuff like that, but that lighting designer is not actually a term. It's just a description of what someone does every day. It's not really, there's not really a, is there lighting design certifications? Yes. You can't say that you're an electrical engineer if you're not an electrical engineer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you can say that you're a lighting designer. So my answer to Greg's question is I don't always know what someone means when they say that. Um, I want to talk about this. You hear different things. There's two jobs for every job applicant out there. There is people, you said they shifted their perspectives on their work-life balance. You talked about, lots of vacancies. It's an employee's market in a way to search for the job they
Mhm.
want. Um, you know, is that showing any signs of switching? Is there any, is the balance switching or is it getting worse?
I think that is going to be switching. I think we're kind of at that tipping point right now where candidates still have a lot of options, but there's a lot of jobs out there. I think, we've been saying it's been a candidate-driven market for the entire year, and it definitely still is. They have a lot of options. But I think with just what everything that's going on with the economy and everything, I think it is going to start turning around again. I don't think it's going to be a complete company client side market in the near future. I still think we have a pretty good run of it being a candidate driven market right now, just maybe not to the extent that it was this year. So,
The
candidates
yeah,
were asking for crazy salaries and, work from home 100% of the time and sign on bonuses and all that. I think that's going to taper off a little bit, but still not go back to a full swing to the other side of the pendulum.
Yeah, there definitely seems there is a shortage of knowledgeable lighting people. I mean, there's a career. Have you heard anything on the lighting controls integrators side? Is that trade emerging as a field of interest to some of your clients, people that understand how to install, commission, and manage advanced lighting control systems?
I have not heard of it a lot. We talk about it, but all of the basically all of the positions that we've had this year, I shouldn't say all, but majority, 95% of the positions we've had this year have not been looking for somebody with that experience. We had one position and it was with an ESCO that was looking for somebody to help commission on the lighting control side, but it's not a big chunk of our business right now. And it's something that I'm definitely interested in and would like to get more involved in. Actually, one employee that we just brought on board is going to be more focusing on that for us, but it hasn't been a huge center of focus in terms of the clients that we work with now.
I'm not a big fan of recruiting companies or employment agencies. I'm just going to tell you, I kind of don't like them. Um, you know, and what I've noticed is I think the growth of, and I'm going to speak generationally here. I mean, I didn't know that my generation, Generation X, had a name until the baby boomers kids came along, the millennials. And everyone was talking about millennials, and I'm like, what the hell's a millennial? Well, it's not me. Well, what the hell am I? I'm a Gen X. Oh, I didn't even know that until like 2012 or something like that. And I think the growth of this industry is directly tied to its need by the millennials. They seem to like to change jobs a lot. And I want to ask you, like, you look at a resume from somebody who's 35 and they worked in the lighting industry, they could have worked at 6 or 7 different companies in their career in 10 years. Do you think this is healthy? And when you're talking to your clients or your prospects or whatever you call them, the candidates, do you talk to them a little bit about, hey, maybe it's time to stick at a company for more than a year and a half? It kind of takes time to build some momentum there. Like, do you ever have conversations like that?
To an extent, yes. I'm a Gen X too, and just found that term out that right around that same time frame. But you look at it's not that's not exclusive to the lighting industry or electrical industry. That's a trend across just working in general, that people are staying. And I don't even think it's necessarily just millennials. There's a lot of people that are making job changes every 2 to 4 years. I think it's more in nature of society and the economy than it is. Yes, I mean there's some involvement in the millennial generation on that, but I think that's just more of a trend in employment in general. You look at companies like may not, but just like the big companies that
Beep.
go through
We got to beep that
layoffs.
out. Yeah, we'll beep that out. Don't worry.
Okay, when we go through big companies, there's they have layoffs. They have rounds of layoffs. It seems every year. So there's people that are letting go of people when they get to a certain point where they have to answer to shareholders, and profit margins and that sort of thing. So it's not always just on the candidate's part; it's on the company's part as well. But yes, generally companies tend to keep their best employees rather than the people that are not maybe not necessarily hitting their numbers all the time. Um, but I do have conversations with my candidates when we're talking through about being me presenting them to my clients, if they've made job moves every other year or every year, that that's going to be a concern for the client. If you've made a job move every year for the last 5 years, why would you not make a job move again in a year? And they're paying a fee, to work with me. Why would they pay a fee to work with somebody that's only going to be there for a year? So I definitely have those conversations. Um, and, it's obviously up to my client who they're the ones making the hiring decision, but yeah.
Hmm. I think that, see, to me, that's what's happening you don't have the people with this deeply entrenched specific skills coming through the pipeline like you used to. You used to see people that worked at a company for 10 or 15 years, and they had a lot of knowledge about a particular subject from the industry perspective. The people that are out there, they seem to have a very tertiary knowledge of the lighting industry, specific only to LEDs and the newest kind of technology. And it concerns me that we aren't producing enough knowledgeable people. Greg, do you know what I'm kicking the can at here?
I do, yeah. I mean, we've talked about before. LED lighting is where it's at now, but you have to know where it came from too, and having that knowledge. And just because you didn't work when it was there doesn't mean you can't know that or you shouldn't know that. Because there's a lot of training that you can learn from it. But yes, so learning it and a lot of
And
stuff you learn on the job too. Yeah.
yeah, and especially with LEDs, I started in this business in 2008 when LEDs was a cool idea and just coming out, and now it's mainstream, and we really don't talk about fluorescents or halogens or you know incandescent for sure anymore. So people just now coming into the industry aren't going to have that knowledge anyway. They're going to have to be trained up on that. That's true of them versus somebody that's changed jobs every 2 or 3 years. Um, but to the point of people changing jobs every 2 to 3 years, and again, I think that's the whole world as a whole. I've had clients that are don't want somebody because they've been in a job for 20 years, and and I make a point that they haven't had other experiences outside of that company. They only know that experience from that company and their processes. So they feel that they're kind of insulated from other ideas and maybe less innovative or creative or understanding how the rest of the world works.
Are the companies you're working with, are they signing people up to full-time positions, or are they signing them up to contracts?
We do all permanent placement. So these are all full-time positions.
Interesting. When it
And of the
comes, oh, go ahead, Greg, you go.
yeah, I was going to say of those, is it? I know it's hard to generalize when there's a variety of different jobs, but is it generally people that want to work from home or people that want to work from the office, or do they? I guess do the manufacturer the clients? And I'm trying to think of the right term. Do they say this person needs to come to our office, or are they all very lenient?
So again, about 50% of the positions that we place are sales, and the majority of the sales positions work from a home office anyway because they're traveling extensively.
Right.
So they're working from home offices. But in like the product management, engineering, even project management, inside sales, those kinds of positions, those do generally need to be in the office. And
Hmm.
we are, so it's probably, I would say 50-50 of people that have to go into the office versus working from home.
But that's 50, meaning 50 of those percent of those people are sales reps that don't generally, they come for a monthly meeting once a month or something like that. But how many people are actually requesting a work from home job that's not a sales job?
Um, it has increased, and that's made things a little bit more
Hmm.
difficult. Um, and I can't give you exact numbers, but it definitely has increased. For the most part, though, they'll accommodate a hybrid schedule where it's 2 or 3 days in the office and the other 2 or 3 days from home.
Hmm. What do you think of that, Greg, Eric?
I think that's what is just standard now, and I wonder a lot, and even at my own business here, we go through it. Is there's value in seeing people, and being in an environment where you're working and right, wrong, whatever. I'm not trying to get into that here, but I like going to an office. I like seeing people. I like the vibe that it can bring because you learn from each other and you feed off each other. And if you're sitting at home behind your desk, a lot of things can distract you there. Um, so I think we should go back to normal, man. Like everybody get in the office again.
Yeah, from
That's what
my
I think.
perspective on that, I find it possible to I don't think my company's big enough to slice out a portion of it that somebody could just sit at a computer at their home and work an 8-hour day. I wonder sometimes, I encountered in the summer someone who was a work from home call service. And, when COVID struck, I don't know if you remember this, Brooke, we're a little off topic here, but all of a sudden companies started to begin to use these softwares to watch what their employees were doing remotely and record keystrokes or calls or, um, you know, record them sitting in front of their computer. And you know what? Just as fast as those softwares came out, the guy I work with here, Greg, the employees came out with softwares which figured out how to make it look like the people were working when they weren't.
Yes, you got it.
And I mean, we these kind of bots are out there, and so I was at a cottage and I'm working full time. Yeah, the computer just goes up there and they go up. The lady would check her email once or twice a day, make a couple phone calls, and was working full time. And I was shocked by this, and I thought to myself, this is really I think something that maybe we need to have a second look at. But right now is not the time. People are not ready. A lot of people they just want to have, like, I want to stay home for 2 days. And if you don't want to do that, I don't want to work for you. I want to stay home for 2 days but get paid for full time. That's kind of like there's a vibe out there in that, isn't there, Brooke?
There, and I mean, obviously, there's bad apples in every bunch, right?
I'm not saying
There's
anybody's a
people.
bad apple. I'm just
Well,
saying
no,
that
but I mean,
that's
there's
out
people
there.
that will take advantage of the system and not do the work, and then there's other people that really thrive at working from home. It depends on the personality and what they do well with. But um,
Sure.
I- yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some people that want to have a couple days at home, and for whatever reason, one of the people I just placed was commuting an hour and a half to work every
Oh
day.
God.
So
Yeah.
you're wasting 3 hours of your day in a car where you can't do anything. So I get to that extent, you
Yeah.
you just got 3.5 or 3 hours of your life back where you can work more or whatever it is. But there's a benefit to working at home, and obviously there's downsides too. My whole office, we went fully remote a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, and yeah, there's pluses and minuses to that. And I totally agree with you, Greg, that I do miss the camaraderie, and we'd all hear each other on the phone and you know cheer when we're having successes and that sort of thing. And there's something
Yep.
lacking when you missing that. Um, but at the same time, we've had a record year. There's people doing the work, and maybe some of them are, me included, doing some less hours because you get distracted at home. But at the same time, we're working harder and working smarter. So there's trade-offs all around. But there's a lot of people that agree that they miss being in an office and they want to go in an office, but maybe not every day of the week because
Mm.
there's convenience to not having to have that long commute.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
And
So,
think about if in
and
your
look,
office
yeah,
you have the water cooler talk, and that distracts you from
well,
your work too. So
Sure.
yeah, there's pluses and minuses to all aspects of this.
Hmm.
all right. So that's going to continue on, but I want to talk a little. I see your recruiting process. I'm working or reading on your website that has 32 discrete steps. So I want you to list all 30. No, I want to know a little bit about the process. What is your process, and what do you guys do without giving away your 32 steps?
So, I mean, we're executive search firm, so we start everything from scratch. We've been doing this for 23 years. We've got a whole database that we've built up from these 32 years. Now I'm stealing your words, over our 23 years. So we've got about 106, over 106,000 people that we've identified in the overall electrical industry. But we start every search from scratch. So we are talking to our clients. It's about half hour to 45-minute phone call to really understand what you're looking for. And that's, going beyond the job description. So what are they doing in a typical day? What's the company culture? Who really works well with your company? Um, what are the goals, challenges, all of that. And then we start putting together a list of people that we would target. We try to get that from anywhere to 100 to 200 names that would make sense for that particular search. And we're also going into LinkedIn and we're doing research and all of that to try to find more names because we always want to find new people that we haven't talked to before. And then we start cold calling those people. So making the phone calls, talking to them about the opportunity and going through interviews, rounds of interviews with them, getting their resume, portfolio if it's the right position for that, um, degree verifications, reference checks, and then we present candidates to them. It's typically, I think our average is about 3 candidates that we present per position, and then scheduling the interviews, walking through when we get to the offer stage, presenting the offer to the candidate, working through that, and then staying in touch with them after they're placed and talking with them about how it's going and staying in touch with the client.
So that process, I assume that's where these steps come from. But to narrow down to get to 3, I mean, you don't talk to every one of them, right? I mean, do you have a series of steps they need to take to get to the next level, or how do you do that?
What do you mean in terms of candidates
Yeah, like
that
if
we
you have
present?
300, a pool of 300, and you're not going to talk to all 300. Maybe you are, but I don't know that you're
No,
going to talk to all 300, right? So you
no,
filter it
and
out by their resume.
yeah, well, and a lot of times, we try to get it down to 100 to 200 names. So we've definitely gone through those lists where we've left a message for them 4 or 5 times to try to get a hold of them, and they're not calling you back for whatever reason. But people that you talk to out of that list are probably anywhere from 20 to 30 or 40, depending on the type of position and if you're catching the person at a time when they want to talk. And then, yes, we're interviewing them and understanding what their background is compared to what the client is looking for and analyzing the resume, walking through their job history, their accomplishments, and all of that. Basically, doing fully interviewing the candidates and making sure they're
Without
a good fit for the client.
without giving away any trade secrets, can you give me an example of the kind of questions you would ask a lighting person?
I mean, we're going into tell me what you did at your company. What were your accomplishments? How were your sales? Talk to me about who you know, what your customers are. I'm going from sales because that's the most common that we place. But
Hmm.
yeah, what kinds of customers have you worked with? How successful you were each year? Why did you make the job moves that you made? Going through all of that.
Do you verify their claimed income?
So the laws are you're not allowed to ask people or ask for their W-2s or anything like that. We can't ask for their previous salary anymore. Excuse me. So we do not ask what they're currently making. We ask what their salary expectations are, and that's what we give to our clients.
Have you seen a growth in people's salary expectations?
This year, yes.
How much?
And then um, probably 20, 30% that they've been asking. But then I always go back to say, okay, then we can't help you because that's not in line with what the salary range is. And then sometimes they'll say, no, I'll take less. Or sometimes they say, no, I'm pretty adamant on that.
Hmm.
Do you do any sort of, and I assume with your questions you get some of the personality out of it, but do you have any official personality quiz or test where you can say this person is this type?
We did that back in the day. Actually, that was before I joined the company, but we found out
Mhm.
there's some companies, each company likes to do their own test, and some companies don't like to do tests at all. So we stopped doing it and leave it up to the client to do.
Does that matter?
The testing,
Yeah, like let's say you find out someone is, high in neuroticism and low in agreeableness and mid-tier in compassion or whatever. You're like, I don't really want to work with that person. Sounds like a bit of not a good employee, not reliable. Does it actually work? You find
it
that?
depends on the client. Honestly, I have some clients that don't believe that those tests really prove anything, and then I have some clients that swear by them and will not move forward with somebody if they don't fit the right, DIS whatever,
Yeah, sure.
for the profile for the
What's your
position.
what's your
So,
gut on it? What's your gut on it? Does it work?
um, and I was a psychology major, so um, I
So
I don't
so tell me
personally
what I'm
use them.
thinking then. If you're a psychology
I can't
major.
I can't do that. Um, um, I personally don't use them in my hiring practices. I've There's a lot of questions that you can answer knowing what the client's looking for, and you can change your answer. To me, I don't think they're 100% accurate, so I don't use them, but they're interesting to review.
I
And
think
go
oh,
ahead.
you finish up. No, I just caught a blip there, so go ahead and finish up.
No, I was saying, I mean, I know a lot of people. I'm in a recruiting group called the Pinnacle Society, and it's a group of 80 top recruiters in the United States. We all did a personality test for one of our conferences, and we are all pretty far different in terms of personalities.
Mm.
So there's a lot of things that make up a person that will, whether you'll do a good job or not.
I think a lot of people fill those out for what they want to be and not who they actually are too.
Yeah.
Right? So the test would have to be what how, what type of person lies like this on a personality test. Like that's how the test would have to work. It would be like,
Yeah.
oh, this type of person actually is honest on a personality test, and these 7 other types are not honest. So we have to re-correlate them, and they're actually this because they lied about that. It's almost like people are typing in, yeah, I'm conscientious. Like, okay,
Yeah.
do you
But
like
they're really not.
orderliness or whatever? And yeah, who knows if they're answering the question correctly or not. I've always wished, if I had a wish before I hired people, I would say I don't even want to interview them. Okay, and this is going to sound super creepy. Okay. Okay. But I would just like to see their room after they've left to go to work in the morning. And I would decide whether or not to hire them if their bed is made and their room is clean, or if they've left the room a mess, if their room looks like it has a mess in it for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And I would rather see what their space is like than how they answer questions. How they live rather than who they are. I'd rather see that, and that would tell me way more about a person. But I'll
So
never be
you
able to
tell them
do
to
that.
I was
do.
gonna say that's on you.
No, you could do that, Mike. You'd say we're going to do a Zoom call. You do it from your bedroom, and have the camera on. Is that what you want?
Yeah, like is the bed because you can tell a lot about a person by the way their house is or the way they live. You can probably tell more. Like, and it can't be like they know you're coming. It has to be like a complete surprise. And you would see like if somebody has chaos on the brain or if they're orderly and neat on time and that sort of thing. Their alarm clock is set. Like things like that. You would know a lot. Greg, do you have any final questions for Brooke before she gives us her final thoughts?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the other services you do, and you say compensation surveys. So do you ever have your clients come to you and say, well, we don't know what we should pay this person, and then that's when you come in and suggest based on that? Is that how it works? And how do you do that survey?
Yeah. So we do, and I have clients actually do that a lot, saying I'm not entirely sure what this position pays, and I'll give them an idea just because I'm in the market all day listening to what people are looking for. Um, the most recent one that we did a pretty broad one back last year when I was doing a presentation for, I think that one was for the IES, and it's basically doing a survey, and it's anonymous because you don't want people you know, giving out that information and relating that back to companies, but asking based on the position and what part of the country that they're in and asking for their salary information. But we also can correlate that through all of the data that we've collected over the years. So each year we kind of we have a field in our database that will track per year what they're making. So we can give an idea of this is what the compensation was this year. This is a kind of idea of what the compensation was 2 years ago, that sort of thing. Like regional
Hmm.
sales managers have gone up pretty significantly in the last 3 years from what they were.
What's the highest paying job in the lighting industry that you see on average?
Podcast host.
That's an interesting question. Um,
Oh,
wow, that's a very interesting question. I mean, salespeople, if they are doing really well and have uncapped commission, can make a ton of money. But
hmm.
wow, that's a great question.
Highest salary. Who gets the highest salary?
I mean, obviously the presidents and the CEOs, but in terms of like mid-level positions,
Yeah.
probably product managers. If you're not including commission, and it's a straight across the board, everybody gets paid roughly the same amount. It's probably product managers,
Mm.
not lighting
All
designers.
right.
Not lighting designers. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real honor to have you in studio and in the virtual studio. Do you have any final thoughts for the Get a Grip on Lighting listeners?
Um, I appreciate you guys having me on board and interviewing me. And I am curious though why you don't like recruiters.
You know, I my business, so I've trained a lot of people from scratch that were
Okay.
poached from my business by recruiters.
Okay.
And those recruiters took them to jobs which had were very high paying in salary and had no, what's the right? So they went from being productive employees at a private company to working for the government.
Yeah,
And yeah, so the government recruiters got them work. Well, not government, but like public
it's
utilities,
interesting.
incentive programs, places like that. And so where they don't, they just their job is to create awareness. So they were working in the private sector selling lighting retrofits, and so on and so forth. And then they ended up working at various not-for-profits and utilities and city agencies to create awareness for energy efficiency programs. And I felt like that was that 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 first of all that's a negative for the economy. Now, do I blame the recruiters? The recruiters got hired to do a job, and they did their job. But it kind of pissed me off. So it's hard to put a training bond on somebody or something like that. It's like I don't like doing that. And so this is the problem we have now, is that I'm very reticent to train someone from scratch.
Mm.
So young people, I used to bring in young people all the time. I used to bring in young people from a college up here, and invariably, after 2 or 3 years, some recruiter would call them and promise them the world. And next thing you know, they're working at this other company, and then a year later, they're working at another company, and a year later, now they're industry floater.
Yeah.
That floats from company to company as a salesperson, and they're floaters. And so I wonder to myself if they would have earned more had they just stayed with one, or maybe the second company, or the third company, or the fourth company. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. We have all sorts of different sayings in our language to discuss this, and I think many recruiters are and obviously present company excluded, but I think many recruiters are selling a snake oil to people just to get them to move. The other thing is that I found a lot of recruiters. You asked the question, so I'm telling you.
Right. Yeah.
I found a lot of recruiters that behave in a malfeasant manner, where they're placing the same client over and over again. And so I don't know if it's a different law in Canada, but they're allowed to see what we call their T4 slip, which is same as your W-2.
Oh,
And so they asked their clients for this sort of stuff. And then I was reviewing this thing, and you see people left their jobs in their best years. And then it turns out that this recruiting company was not only recruiting and placing people, but also training them on how they can sue their employer for different types of things. And then during one of these situations, I discovered that the bonuses, that the big years that this particular person that was moving from company to company, those bonuses were actually settlements with her previous employers.
oh,
Um,
jeez.
yeah. And so this was a company that was quite good at saying, hey, I'll move you from your job, but if you get fired, you just call us and we'll make sure that that employer pays you.
Oh, wow.
Not
That,
only pays you for your time with them, but also for all the years that you worked for the other company, because they
wow.
actively recruited you. And so now that company's on the hook, not only for the severance of 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years working for you, but also the other 6 years you worked for the company that they recruited you from. And so
Wow.
that
I've
they're
not heard that.
no, I've seen that happen with a particular company.
Mm.
And they were dealing in people, and those people wanted assurances of their income because they're moving companies. Maybe they're a little bit nervous, and that's the kind of assurances they gave them. And I
Wow.
didn't feel like that was very ethical.
Yeah. I've never heard of that, and I would agree.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. I've not heard that.
Well, let
Sorry.
me let me close this out with something Mike's going to like to hear because I had to read. I was going to ask you the question, but an egret, as a spirit animal, often
Haha.
comes to find themselves in between places, people, or phases in their lives. The awareness of having no real bearings makes people uneasy. The egret guides you through that uncertainty with greater ease. During this period, you may feel alone, but you are not. Spirit
Wow.
animal for you, Mike.
There you go, an egret. Good name for a consulting company.
I never heard that definition, but I like it.
There you go.
Brooke Ziolo, it's a great honor. Greg, what about Satco, buddy? SATCO.com, the gangsters.
I tell you, I'm going to start looking for these exterior fixtures from others to have the integrated respirator. That's the kind of company Satco is. They're not going to do something that everybody else is. They're going to look at it and say, how can we make it better? How can we make it the best? And that's what they do with their LED exterior fixtures. So check that out.
Go to SATCO.com. And of course, membership drive, Greg Eric, 2023. NAILD needs to grow.
Let's do it.
And we are bringing in lighting controls integrators. We're bringing in darkness restoration and preservation advocates. And of course, lighting distributors. That's right. And folks, if you made it all the way to the end, we give thanks to Brooke Ziolo, but really to you, the listeners, as we've said dozens and dozens of times, we don't have viewers or listeners. We only have colleagues that don't do podcasts. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.